7 years ago, Lucas saved me from my stepfather. I gave him 7 chances. So, when he suggested getting back together after he cheated, I still agreed. Until I heard him telling his friends the reason for our reconciliation. He exhaled a puff of smoke, a careless smile on his face. I've put so much effort into her, I gotta get my money's worth, right? I secretly hoped this was the 6th time. Wendy is average looking, with an average personality. The only interesting thing about her is in bed. I just lift a hand, and she knows what position to switch to. Lucas casually flicked his cigarette ash. The men in the room instantly erupted in suggestive hoots. Can't believe Wendy looks so prim and proper but is such a freak in bed. No wonder Luke still wants her back. Lucas scoffed, slowly exhaling a puff of smoke. I've spent so much effort on her, I have to get my money's worth, right? Just a door away. My heart suddenly felt like it was pierced by a needle. I stood outside, peering at him through the crack in the door. When Lucas said this, he was lounging lazily in his chair. He was handsome, with refined features and smooth lines. Time had washed away his boyish youthfulness. At 27, Lucas was mature and wealthy. He exuded the relaxed air of someone in power, accustomed to money. Careless. Confident. The men's laughter inside abruptly stopped when I pushed the door open. I was holding a freshly cut fruit platter. Smiling, as if I knew nothing. What are you guys talking about, so happy? I didn't miss the shock and guilt on their faces. For a moment, the atmosphere fell into an eerie silence. Only Lucas remained as usual. He was fearless. Not afraid that I would be hurt if I heard. One of his buddies reacted quickly. He immediately found an excuse. I heard Luke prepared an anniversary gift for sis-in-law. He flew abroad a month in advance to have a master custom make a gown. When we heard about it, who wouldn't praise Luke for loving his wife to death? Everyone around chimed in. I just looked straight at Lucas. The expression on his face gradually faded. We both knew his anniversary gift wasn't for me. I never wear dresses. 3 days ago, I had already seen that dress. A red dress adorned with countless diamonds. Fiery and bright. Just like the owner of this dress. At night, after seeing the guests off, I lay in bed after a shower. In the darkness, hot breath fanned across my neck. I pushed him. It was useless. The hand around my waist tightened instead. I turned my head and looked at him quietly. Lucas's eyes burned with desire, his voice slightly hoarse. What's wrong? I pulled away from him, a bit tired. Let's skip it today. Seeing me lying stiffly in bed, Lucas lost interest. He got out of bed and lit a cigarette. The light flickered, obscuring his expression. Is it because of that dress? I didn't speak. He rubbed his brow tiredly. It's just a dress, Wendy. You're too sensitive. I hummed softly. I didn't want to continue this topic with him. He irritably stubbed out the cigarette. Next week's business banquet requires formal attire. If you don't wear a dress, I can only ask Jenna to accompany me. I never wear dresses, nor do I dress up. Even bright colors never appeared on me. My closet only contained a pile of drab long-sleeved shirts and pants. Jenna was his assistant. A girl who always dressed herself beautifully. Also, Lucas's affair partner. My silence became unreasonable stubbornness in his eyes. Lucas's voice turned cold. I've said everything I need to say. Jenna and I aren't as dirty as you think. He turned and slammed the door loudly. I remained in the same position, lying in bed. Tears, however, slowly streamed down my face. Lucas said that even without dressing up, I was the most beautiful in his eyes. Now, his words were all blaming me. Blaming me for not dressing up, for making him unable to show me off. I raised my hand to wipe away the tears. Carefully, I calculated in my mind, this was the 6th time. Sleepless all night, I woke up in the evening. There were countless missed calls from unknown numbers on my phone. I called back. A nurse answered the phone. She said my mom was seriously ill and in very bad condition, asking me to go back and see her. I interrupted the nurse's rambling accusations. I said lightly, "Wrong number," and hung up. The call wasn't a wrong number. I just didn't want to go back. I hated her. My dad died early. To earn money, my mom went to work in another city. I was left with relatives. Until I was 17, she came back. And brought a man with her. She said she got married and found her happiness. Now she wanted to take me to live with them. Full of anticipation, I left with her. Little did I know, the beginning of her happiness was also the beginning of my suffering. That man looked refined and easygoing. But when she wasn't around, he would casually touch my body. Years of living under someone else's roof had made my personality timid and self-deprecating. After he found out, I didn't dare to resist. He became increasingly brazen. He would even rub my leg with his foot under the dining table. I carefully brought it up to her. That my stepfather might be harassing me. She was silent for a moment. Then she reprimanded me sternly. "You're so young, yet you think so badly of people, spouting nonsense." I cried, incoherently trying to prove to her that I wasn't lying. She frowned, looking at me with a scrutinizing gaze. Her eyes grew increasingly impatient. Finally, a slap ended the accusation. Lucas wasn't home. We parted on bad terms last night. He probably wouldn't be back for dinner. I told the housekeeper not to prepare dinner. I went out alone. Warm yellow streetlights illuminated the avenue. I drove aimlessly, not knowing where I wanted to go. Passing by the old town's food street, I realized I hadn't eaten. In college, Lucas and I often came here to eat. Meatball soup and plum juice. It was the most extravagant reward for our impoverished selves. So many years have passed, and the original plum juice stall is no longer there. Fortunately, the meatball soup hasn't changed. As I reached the shop entrance, I saw Lucas. And Jenna, sitting beside him. Jenna had a bright smile, and Lucas looked at her with a gentle expression. I stood aside and watched for a moment. My heart didn't ache as much as I imagined. As I turned to leave, Lucas saw me. He frowned slightly and walked towards me. "What are you doing here?" I told the truth, "Eating." His frown deepened. The housekeeper didn't cook. I shook my head, wanted a change of pace. Jenna waved at me, standing beside Lucas. "Wendy, you're here too. Want to eat with us?" Lucas's expression softened a little. "You haven't eaten yet. Have a few bites first, I'll cook for you when we get home." I subtly distanced myself from them. I refused. "No need, you guys eat first. I drove here myself." But Lucas grabbed my wrist. "All right, stop making a scene. I'll have someone drive your car back later." I suddenly felt very powerless. I let him lead me to sit opposite him and Jenna. Jenna playfully stuck out her tongue. "Why don't we let Wendy sit over here?" Lucas dismissed it. "It's fine, it's just a seat." "Wendy, don't be angry, okay? The CEO and I are used to sitting like this." I silently ate the meatballs in my bowl, pretending not to hear Jenna's provocation. I couldn't remember the last time I had meatball soup. But I always felt the taste had changed. It wasn't as delicious as I remembered. It was somewhat tasteless. When we left, we took one car. Jenna sat in the passenger seat. Lucas said she got carsick easily. I didn't say anything and got into the back seat. When Lucas got out to refuel, only Jenna and I were in the car. She extended her fingers, adorned with a delicate manicure. Feigning distress, "Wendy, I initially thought my nails were too long and inconvenient for work. But Mr. Lucas said that since I'm young and beautiful now, I should dress myself up properly. It would make him happier to look at me too." I agreed. "They are quite pretty." She was silent for a moment. She lowered her voice. Wendy, I think people should know their place. You two had already broken up, why get back together? Men like beautiful and interesting women. You can't hold on to his heart by clinging desperately. I didn't speak. She wanted to say more, but then she saw Lucas approaching. What are you two talking about? Jenna pouted. Are you going to ask about girls' topics too, Mr. Lucas? All right, my bad. Lucas's tone was doting. But when he saw me, his body stiffened, and he stopped abruptly. I seemed oblivious to the ambiguity between them. I leaned back against the seat, feigning sleep. Not until after Jenna was dropped off home. I took the initiative to speak. Lucas, I need to leave for a few days. I decided to go back and see my mom one last time. Looking at the emaciated woman on the hospital bed. My heart wavered a little. Ever since I left home, I had never gone back. This was the first time I had seen her in 7 years. My mom saw me standing outside the hospital room. First, she was stunned, then she called my name in disbelief. Amy? Is that Amy? She waved at me, but I didn't move. She looked really ugly now. Most of her hair had fallen out, leaving only a few sparse strands. Her once rosy cheeks were now sunken and dry. She cried and apologized to me, saying she was sorry. She rambled on and on. She started to care about me like an ordinary mother. Worrying about my future. Finally, she said she regretted it. I listened in silence. The things I once craved the most now felt bland and uninteresting. 7 years ago, on the day I turned 18. My stepfather, while she was away, pried open my bedroom door. He wanted to assault me. When he pinned me down. The first thing I thought was, Mom, save me. What I hated was never that she couldn't save me in time. It was after I called the police. She rushed to the police station and slapped my trembling self. You ungrateful brat. Your father feeds you and shelters you, and this is how you slander him. If I forgave her now because of her current pitiful state, I would be betraying the self who had lived under someone else's roof for years, suffering grievances. I only stayed for a week. I left most of my savings for my mom. I hated her, but she gave birth to me. This was also our last meeting. When I came back, Lucas didn't approve. He gave me the cold shoulder and slept in the study. Before returning, I made a special trip to the bookstore we used to frequent. I bought him a fountain pen. The bookstore had a wall covered in sticky notes. I never expected to find the note Lucas and I wrote together. Lucas's handwriting was strong and powerful. Lucas will always love Wendy. The young man's thoughts were ardent and sincere. On a whim, for reasons I couldn't explain, I took down that sticky note. It was already dark when I got home. I had just entered the password to open the door, but it wouldn't open. The door lock password was my birthday. Ever since I moved into this house, the password had never been changed. After 3 consecutive prompts of incorrect password, just as I was about to call Lucas, the door opened. The person who opened the door was Lucas. He frowned instinctively when he saw me. Why are you back? Before I could speak, a female voice came from the room. Luke, who is it? Jenna, wearing silk pajamas, had probably just showered. Her hair wasn't dry yet, damply draped over her shoulders. When she saw me, she also showed a surprised expression. Wendy, why are you back? I fixed my gaze on Lucas, looking at him quietly without speaking. His expression was impatient. Don't get any funny ideas. Jenna's landlord was giving her a hard time, and she couldn't find a suitable place right away, so I let her stay here temporarily. I nodded to show I understood. Finally, the 7th time. Clutching the pen in my pocket, I turned to leave. He just thought I was sulking. Wendy, stop it. Can you not always think our relationship is so dirty? Jenna gave me a provocative smile, which she quickly suppressed. She sidled up to Lucas, instigating softly. Wendy, if you mind me, I can move out. I smiled and shook my head. No need, I'll go. Fortunately, my suitcase wasn't unpacked yet, so I could just drag it away. But Lucas grabbed my arm. His expression was weary. Wendy, you weren't like this before. Why are you always being so unreasonable now? I looked at his hand and handed him the note. Let's break up, Lucas. Lucas wanted to say something. When he saw the words on the note, he fell silent. The second time I broke up with Lucas, I was much more adept. I no longer felt that suffocating sadness like the last time. Crying with open eyes until dawn. Lying on the big bed in the hotel, I slept soundly. A dreamless night. The fact that Lucas didn't love me. From initial disbelief to breakdown, helplessness. Repeatedly reflecting on myself, trying in vain to recapture the past. To calmly accepting it. When exactly was it? Perhaps it was the 5th time I forgave him, or even earlier. I can't remember clearly either. Now, breaking up with him, I actually felt somewhat relieved. Even though I had already made up my mind to give up. Occasionally, when I thought about it, my heart would still ache faintly. I threw all my energy into work. When I'm busy, I don't have time to think about those messy things. It's laughable, I never wear dresses. Yet I'm a wedding dress designer. The new client was a guy. This wasn't common. He was here to custom make a wedding dress for his ex-girlfriend. After carefully inquiring about his requirements and agreeing on the finalized sketch, I made the initial version of the wedding dress that same day. Brendan carefully touched the dress on the mannequin. As I was explaining the details to him, my vision slowly darkened. Probably because I hadn't eaten. My low blood sugar was acting up. My legs felt weak, and just as I was about to fall, Brendan caught me. I was about to pull away from his embrace when a hand grabbed me. My vision cleared considerably. Lucas's face was ugly. Wendy, are you that desperate for men? Can't be without one for a moment? You break up with me and immediately find the next one? His words were like ice water to the bone, drenching me from head to toe. A slap landed on his face, my fingers trembling. We knew each other too well. We knew what words hurt the most. I was never able to escape the shadow my stepfather cast on me. On my birthday, he gave me a dress. When I went to change, he pried open my door and tore the dress to shreds. After that, I never dared to wear a dress again. After Lucas took me away. My mother once used the filthiest words to speculate about me. She said, "You can't be so desperate for a man that you'd go for your father." Lucas knew all of this. When he said it, he should have known I would never forgive him again. I calmly withdrew my hand. Lucas, we've already broken up. There will be no further relationship between us. Lucas still had a slap mark on his face. He pointed at Brendan. Just for him? His expression was contorted, looking exceptionally comical. When Lucas said this, I suddenly felt it was very familiar. The last time we broke up, I seemed to be like this too. Hysterical, like a clown. I pushed his hand away and said lightly, "He's my client. There was never anything between us. You have a dirty mind, so you see everything as dirty." Lucas was furious, his eyes red. My heart is dirty? You two were hugging. And you still say it's nothing? After he said it, he froze. A secret sense of revenge rose in my heart. I looked at him, somewhat amused. What, so he gets angry when he hears his own words too? When I broke up with Lucas, I left in too much of a hurry. I only took one suitcase with me. Perhaps at that time, I still held a sliver of illusion about him in my heart. I brought a moving company to his door. I wanted to take all my things away. To completely separate from him. Only when I was packing up my manuscripts in the study, I found one was missing. It was one I designed for myself. When we were most in love, Lucas and I lived in a cheap basement. The two of us were so poor, all we had was love. Lucas said, when he made money, the first thing he would do was marry me. At that time, none of us questioned the truth of that statement. We fantasized about the future. I drew that wedding dress design. At the wedding, the bride should wear a pure white wedding dress and walk down the aisle with the person she loves most. I hoped that happiness would overcome fear. I would also marry Lucas. That wedding dress sketch was revised again and again, but I was never able to make it. I asked Lucas if he had seen it. His face was haggard, his eyes betraying guilt. It's just a piece of paper, it's not that important, is it? I frowned, insisting he give me an answer. Finally, he couldn't hold out against me and spoke. Jenna saw it last time, said she liked it, so I gave it to her. I looked at him silently, trying to see a shadow of his former self on his face. But he got angry. You don't even wear dresses, what's the use of that sketch? The boy who once saved me without a second thought completely faded from my memory. At this moment, I was absolutely certain I would never love him again. Lucas, we will never have another chance. When I finished saying that, panic flashed in Lucas's eyes, but he quickly calmed down. After all, I knew he cheated and still got back together with him. In his heart, I loved him to the extreme. These breakup words were all said in anger and couldn't be taken seriously. After some time, when I calmed down, he would coax me again. We would reconcile as if nothing had happened. Together for 7 years, he understood me. Yet, he didn't understand me. I am a very timid person. Years of living under someone else's roof made me cherish the kindness shown by others even more. Most of the time, this kindness would become a sharp blade that stabbed me in the back. After every bloody wound, I would swear never to easily trust others again. But I was too starved for love. That little bit of kindness was always infinitely magnified in my heart. I couldn't resist it. So, I decided to set a standard for myself in my heart. 3 strikes and you're out. Those who were good to me could only hurt me 3 times. I would forgive them 3 times. When Lucas rescued me from under my stepfather, I decided to give him 7 chances. There was love, and also gratitude. When love gradually dissipated, leaving only gratitude, I began to slowly look forward to when he would use up his last chance. I was most afraid of owing others. Even if I was extremely disappointed in him, I would tolerate him 7 times. Now, we were finally even. Habit is a bad thing. Memories always surface unintentionally. To numb myself, I filled my time with work. The dim, lightless nights were always particularly hard to bear. I learned to drink. The day my mom passed away, I got myself dead drunk. I hated her. But when she left, I still grieved for her. Perhaps kinship was too tenuous for me. Loneliness was my constant companion. I began to long for someone to talk to. So, when Brendan came for the last time, talking about wedding dress details, I started asking him why he was customizing this wedding dress. His smile was bitter. He only said he couldn't marry her, but he couldn't let go. Perhaps we were both hurt in love. I actually resonated with him. Back and forth, we became familiar. We often met up for drinks. Brendan was a very gentlemanly guy. I had no tolerance for alcohol and liked to get myself drunk. He would take me home. When he sent the wedding dress to his ex-girlfriend, but it was returned, he was dejected and drank moodily all night. To comfort him, I told him my story with Lucas, like a joke. 7 years, just when I thought my suffering was over and I had found happiness. It came to an abrupt end. A young, bright girl caught his eye, making him gradually forget me. I laughed and teased myself, only see the new love laugh, not the old love cry. Brendan frowned and took the wine bottle from my hand. Wendy, you just had bad luck with men before. Things will get better from now on. He said, karma is a bitch, those who betray true feelings will eventually be betrayed. I smiled at him, and in the haze, I actually felt a slight stirring in my heart. Brendan, as usual, took me home. I had drunk too much, my legs were weak, and my vision was blurry. He sighed and helped me upstairs. Brendan had done this many times. He also knew my home password. He let me lean against him while he skillfully entered the password. From the stairwell behind us, a figure emerged. Lucas was unshaven, reeked of smoke, and looked very tired. His red eyes stared intently at us. "Wendy, didn't you say he was just your client? You two are living together?" His voice trembled, and his grip on my hand tightened unconsciously. I winced in pain and instinctively pulled away. Lucas held on tight. It was Brendan who helped me break free. I had told him about Lucas and me. He sneered at Lucas. "Does a cheater also have the right to pester someone?" Lucas seemed not to hear, insisting on pulling me. Brendan opened my door and settled me in. Only then did he turn to look at him. Brendan blocked him outside the door, looking him up and down. He spoke coldly. "If you have any self-awareness, you shouldn't continue to pester him." Lucas ignored him, trying to enter. But Brendan blocked him firmly. He roared in a low voice, "Who are you, and what right do you have to meddle in our affairs? As you can see." He gestured meaningfully towards the inside of the room. Lucas recklessly shouted my name, "Wendy. Get out here." Brendan frowned, pushed him out the door, and closed it. "You insist on making a scene, don't you?" He rolled up his sleeves and swung a punch at Lucas's face. The noise outside the door was too loud. It was particularly jarring in the quiet of the night. I rubbed my still groggy head, struggled to get up, and opened the door. The first thing I saw was the two of them entangled in a fight. Brendan and Lucas were fighting fiercely. Both had bruises on their faces. Lucas looked more disheveled. I stopped them. Looking at the injuries on Brendan's face, I felt a little guilty. I let him go inside first, and I would talk to Lucas alone. When Lucas looked at me, his eyes were filled with grievance. "Wendy, is this how you treat me?" My head was throbbing. Hearing him speak only made me feel irritated. "Lucas, I said we were over. Did you think I was just kidding? Is it because of him?" I interrupted him. "No, it's because of you." Astonishment flashed in Lucas's eyes. "Are you upset about Jenna?" "I can explain." I waved my hand. "I don't want to know about your affairs, but Lucas, I don't love you anymore, do you understand?" His voice was hoarse. "I can change, Amy, don't leave me." Lucas's eyes were red and teary. Fragile and humble. I looked at him, unable to feel a shred of pity. If it were before, I would have felt sorry for him. Now, I found it amusing. He looked just like my pathetic self during our first breakup. So, I was this ridiculous in his eyes too. I warned Lucas not to bother me again. Otherwise, I would definitely call the police. He looked hurt, staring at me in disbelief. As if he couldn't imagine I would be so resolute. I didn't waste any more words and closed the door in his face. The entryway light was off. Brendan stood in the shadows watching me. "You don't have feelings for him anymore, do you?" His face was still bruised, black and blue. It looked quite funny. I pulled him onto the sofa. I took out the first aid kit to help him treat his wounds. My movements were gentle, but he still winced in pain. My nose tingled. It felt good to be protected. At that moment, I felt my heart pounding. Emotions, like a volcanic eruption, couldn't be suppressed in the night. Hormones were at play. I reached out to touch his face. Brendan froze, obediently letting me touch him. I heard myself ask him, "Brendan, why don't we try?" He lowered his eyes, not answering me. I awkwardly withdrew my hand. He held my hand. "Let's try, maybe we'll have a different ending." That night, we were silent, yet we kept each other company. Woke up from sleep. After the relationship changed, the brief awkwardness quickly returned to calm. We started dating like a normal couple. Shopping at the supermarket together, buying each other's favorite foods. Going home to cook as the sun set. Warm and simple. It was the kind of love I had longed for. But I still often ran into Lucas downstairs. He would look at our clasped hands and stand there silently. Not daring to approach, nor willing to leave. Lucas came almost every day. Brendan and I treated him like air. Now, in my eyes, he was just an insignificant person. Spring is rainy. I don't like rainy days. I found a comedy movie, with my favorite snacks on the table. Wrapped in a blanket, snuggled on the sofa with Brendan. The door was banged on violently, waking me from my drowsiness. I irritably opened the door, only to see Jenna. She was soaking wet, holding a flushed Lucas in her arms. As soon as she saw me, she pointed at my nose and cursed. "Wendy, can you stop haunting us? You've already broken up, why are you still stringing him along?" Jenna hysterically accused me. Her cursing got uglier and uglier. "Don't you know, a good ex should be like they're dead. Aren't you shameless?" I slapped her hand away. My gaze on her was cold. Whose fault is it if you can't keep your man? Did I ask him to come find me? Jenna looked stunned. Because, she had once said those words to me. When I realized she and Lucas were having an affair. I found her, afraid she was being deceived, and tried to persuade her kindly. But she looked at me provocatively. "Only useless people can't keep their own men." Only then did I realize how ridiculous my worry was. She probably didn't expect the boomerang to come back so quickly. Brendan stood behind me, his voice contemptuous. "Is this that shameless homewrecker?" Jenna had never been cursed at like this before. Her initial arrogance was gone, her face flushed red with anger. "They already broke up." Brendan nodded. "Doesn't stop you from being the other woman." Jenna was furious and slapped at my face. Just as I was about to dodge, Brendan had already blocked her hand. "You hit my girlfriend in front of me, you think I'm dead, right?" Jenna screamed and struggled free from his hand. Brendan didn't waste words either. He threw a glass of water in the face of Lucas, who was lying nearby. Looking at Lucas, who opened his eyes in a daze. Brendan's tone was sarcastic. "How much longer are you going to watch the show?" Lucas got caught in the rain downstairs and developed a fever. He was still dazed. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw Jenna blocking my doorway. He struggled to sit up and gave me a complicated look. He grabbed Jenna and was about to leave. "I'm not leaving." "Lucas, you two already broke up, why do you still come looking for her?" Jenna's voice was tinged with tears. Lucas frowned impatiently. "My business has nothing to do with you. You clearly said you had feelings for me, how can it have nothing to do with me?" Lucas, without allowing any argument, dragged her away. But Jenna, from somewhere, found strength. She broke free from Lucas and lunged at me. Fortunately, Brendan protected me tightly, and her slap missed. Jenna didn't give up. She cursed at me, "Bitch. Why don't you just die?" Lucas pushed her to the ground. "What right do you have to curse her?" His eyes were bloodshot, looking at Jenna as if she were an enemy. There was no trace of his previous protectiveness towards her. I watched the two of them coldly. And laughed mockingly. Lucas looked at me helplessly. "Amy, I took out my phone and showed him the screen. I told you last time, if you cause trouble again, I will definitely call the police." His face turned pale, and his hand dropped limply. The police arrived quickly. We were all taken back to the police station. Jenna causing trouble at the door was captured by the security camera. I refused to mediate. So she had to go to the police station for a few days. When they left, Lucas was already delirious with fever. He was still muttering my name. I pretended not to hear. Vaguely, I heard him say, "Amy, I'm sorry." After this incident, Lucas never came again. He sent me a package. Inside were my drawings and a handwritten letter. I didn't read the letter. I burned it along with the drawings. The flames devoured them, and all the past turned to ashes with the paper. The dark clouds in my heart dispersed a lot. At least, I no longer needed alcohol to sleep. Life was as calm as water, bland and tasteless. A thought arose in my mind: I wanted to break up with Brendan. When the emotions subsided, reason prevailed. I realized I didn't like Brendan that much. After the ups and downs, I seemed to have fallen ill. He appeared just in time. Like a miracle drug. It temporarily soothed me. Only when everything returned to normal did I realize we weren't actually suitable for each other. During our time together, there wasn't much spark. The same went for him towards me. A woman's sixth sense is always very accurate. My intuition told me his heart wasn't with me either. We leaned on each other, but each had their own thoughts. Brendan didn't see me much anymore. I didn't really care either. When I subtly hinted that I wanted to break up, he sensed it keenly. He held me tightly, full of anxiety. I patted his back soothingly. My mind was already planning my escape. Brendan and his ex-girlfriend were together for 3 years. And they were each other's first love. We initially got together because of failed relationships. He still had his ex-girlfriend in his heart. When I saw on the news that a minor earthquake had occurred where Brendan's ex-girlfriend lived, I pretended to casually chat with him about it. Brendan's eyelashes trembled slightly, but he still pretended nothing had happened. I knew he cared. I generously advised him to go and check on his ex. Just to know she was safe would be good. Brendan refused. He held my hand. No, I won't contact my ex. I don't know if he was saying this to me. Or to himself. I didn't care. As expected, he went to find his ex. They probably had a good chat. From the moment he stopped replying to my messages, I knew they were about to reconcile. I was happy to see this happen. And I took the opportunity to suggest a breakup. Brendan was strange. Even though he had his ex back, he didn't want to break up. I insisted on breaking up, and he finally compromised. He just asked with a bitter smile, "Is it because you haven't gotten over Lucas?" I shook my head, my words full of affection. "You're not happy with me, I want to help you find happiness." His eyes flickered. But he remained silent. We were initially together to heal each other. Now that we were healed, there was no reason to continue. This ending was fair to him, and to me. I still occasionally heard news about Lucas. For example, Jenna was pregnant. The two were about to get engaged. Not long after, they broke up again. It was said that Jenna was pregnant with someone else's child. She wanted to use the child to force Lucas to marry her. Lucas never believed it, but under pressure from his parents, he still got engaged. When she was 4 months pregnant, Lucas forced her to have an amniocentesis. Perhaps with a gambler's mentality. Jenna went. And lost the gamble. I just laughed these off as gossip. Women always do some earth-shattering stupid things for love. The first time we broke up, I also did many stupid things. Begging for reconciliation even when I knew he was cheating. At that moment, I lost my principles and reason. Like a dog without any dignity, wagging its tail and begging. I even thought, if only I were pregnant, then I could keep him. At that time, I really loved him. Loved him to the point where I could do many things that even I detested. The second time we broke up, I didn't love him that much anymore, but I still couldn't let go. My hasty relationship with Brendan was also to get over him. 7 years, what's the difference from family? How could I just give up like that? Slowly, I finally understood. The fundamental reason I couldn't let go was the lack of love. The momentary flutter of my heart for Brendan was also because of the lack of love. After figuring all this out, I decided to raise myself all over again. To do what I want to do. To see the scenery I want to see. To put myself first and satisfy myself as much as possible. I found that this wasn't a difficult thing to do. Walking out of the shadows of the past doesn't require anyone else's help. When I once again saw a beautiful dress in the shop window, I didn't just stand at the door looking. Instead, I walked in and put it on. The green silk dress reminded me of the green dress in Atonement. Looking at myself in the mirror. The green dress, simple and elegant. It flowed on me like a river. Vibrant, passionate. When she put on that green dress, I finally understood what a spring breeze intoxicated night was. And I, at this moment, completely reconciled with myself. Dare to dress myself up. When targeted by evil, the fault never lies with the dressed-up self. I have forgiven many people in my heart. But I have never forgiven myself. I resented the self who lost dignity to beg for reconciliation. I forgot, there is no absolute sobriety in love. Forgot my own craving for love. To love someone is to forgive and tolerate them infinitely. I managed to fulfill my own wishes. But I failed to tolerate myself. In the days that followed, I loved myself wholeheartedly and without reservation. I faced my feelings frankly. When I meet someone who makes my heart flutter, I will still try. Even if the results are the same. But so what? If the process is beautiful enough to make me happy, the result doesn't matter. It's just that I won't be like before. Getting battered and bruised in relationships. I invest very little emotion. My expectations of others are also very low. Faced with breakups, I slowly stopped caring as much. Life is like a train, some people get on, and some people get off. What I need to do is not miss the scenery along the way. To let myself fully enjoy the beauty. Happy people use their childhood to heal their whole lives, unhappy people use their whole lives to heal their childhood. The past cannot be changed. What I can do is to make my present self live as well as possible. People who lack love spend their lives humbly begging for love. When I have 100% of my own love, then I won't be beaten black and blue for a little bit of love given by others. The debridement process is very painful. You have to clearly feel the rotten wound being gouged out from the root. Only after bleeding profusely will it heal and grow new flesh. My life has just begun. All stories are to be continued. So, I do not lack the courage to forge ahead.